Hello there everyone, this is the Wayback Tech once again with another vintage retro computer build right here. Actually, this is more of a restoration. I got this computer about 3 years ago. This was a custom built computer from a computer store a few towns away from me, and the computer actually still had the original build sheet inside of it. I've decided to go ahead and restore it back to the way it was when I got it. So I'm just going to go ahead and do kind of a restoration on this, just kind of clean it up, put the original motherboard and processor back in it. Everything in this case was pretty much original. The exception was that it had a 5 1/4 inch floppy drive right under the CD-ROM, and I took that floppy drive out and put it into my 386. This is an Nlight tower case, so I had an Nlight cover from an old case of mine, and I ended up throwing it away because I lost the side panels to it. When I got the case, it actually had a 20 gigabyte hard drive, I believe it was the size, installed in it, and the original drive was no longer there. This is an Nlight case, even though it has an Aura sticker on it. I'm guessing that the Aura brand was a house brand case, as they called it at the local computer store. This is pretty typical. You'd buy a computer case and then you'd have some custom stickers made up so you can put right there your own, if you got your own model or brand or whatever you want to call it there of computer, you'd put your sticker right there. And you can definitely tell an Nlight case right away by these sliding drive trays right here. And of course, sometimes like this one, they don't really want to go back in. One of the reasons why I didn't really ever like these. There's also one that usually goes right here. I don't know if I still have this one or not. It doesn't really matter. It's in the way anyway if you put it there. And then it has another one right here, and you can mount a, I'm guessing, an 80mm fan right here. This one has a Touch brand power supply. Ooh, Touch. You can see they used it. This is another interesting thing. Instead of using the proper 3 1/2 inch floppy drive connector on here, they chose to use a 3 1/2 to a 5 1/4 inch adapter here, and then put that on there. I guess that kind of keeps the cabling cleaner, I suppose. Of course, it makes it a pain in the butt to get that back on there if you ever have to. There we go. So here's a look at the original build sheet here. You can see the original cost of this machine was $2,256. Pretty pricey for even back then. This is the due date, so this is when the customer probably came and picked it up, or soon after that, something like that. Up here is the original customer's name and phone number, and I don't want to put that on YouTube for obvious reasons. The case is an Aura case, which is correct. They call the motherboard an Aura brand motherboard, which I'm guessing that this is their house branded computer, so they just call their motherboard the same name, because there is no such thing as an Aura brand motherboard. Of course, you can see their serial number right here of the motherboard, which does in fact match, and I'll show you that in a minute. We have a Cyrix 166 megahertz, and you can see that they misspelled Cyrix on there. Two 16 megs EDO SIMs for a total of 32 megabytes, and a 256K of level 2 cache. This is the onboard cache on the motherboard. There is no Coast SIM, although one can be added to it. We have the COM1 here, and they've actually labeled the IRQ for that, which is pretty cool. Originally this had a 1.6 gig hard drive. They didn't label the brand of it, so I can only guess it was probably either a Maxtor or a Western Digital. And this is how I know that the 1.2 megabyte floppy that was in the case was not original, because you can see it is not circled right there. So I originally had a PCI video card with 1 megabyte of memory. At some point this was upgraded to 2 megabytes, because that's what's on it right now. It's actually a Trident 9680, I think it is. Windows 95. And given the original build date of this computer, I'm going to say this was probably Windows 95A. It possibly could have been Windows 95B. It's definitely not C, because C didn't come out until sometime in '97. So it's I'm guessing it's probably A edition. Zoltrex brand 36K modem, which is not in the system anymore. I've never heard of Zoltrex, so I'm not sure. That's probably an El Cheapo brand, if I had to really guess on that. Internal 8X CD-ROM, which is there. And matter of fact, that's pretty much the same CD-ROM, at least from looking at it, that the Gateway computers used at the time. 16-bit sound card, and this was just an El Cheapo ISA sound card with a crystal chipset on it, so a really cheap sound card. OptiQuest 17-inch monitor. So this was probably $300 or $400, maybe even $500 of the cost right here, just in the OptiQuest 17-inch monitor, because 17-inch was pretty big and pretty expensive back then. I got a Microsoft mouse and keyboard. This was probably a $50 or $60 or $70 keyboard back then. These Microsoft Natural, and these are the ones that were the split keyboard. You know, the half, you know, split down the middle there, and they're kind of angled and that kind of thing, which never really caught on. I always hated those. Microsoft 3.0 mouse. I'm guessing that's probably a serial mouse. Yeah, it says serial right there. Of course, neither of these did I get with the computer, nor did I get the monitor, of course. We have Express installation, which probably means installed the operating system, the drivers, and possibly the software bundle. Down here I say Cyber Highway MS Bundle Plus. So I'm guessing this was the Microsoft bundle, which is probably, I don't know, Works or something like that, and then the Plus pack for Windows 95. I'm not sure what this Cyber Highway thing is here. I really don't. I've never heard of that. Installed software, of course, that wasn't written, and then you've got the original assembler's initials right here, which kind of almost look like mine. But and then down here we've got the original computer store's name, MicroAge Computer Center. I googled this just to see, and I'm blocking the again the phone number and the address. The computer center is still around. MicroAge Computer Center, if you Google that, it's actually headquartered in Arizona. So I'm guessing during the time of this computer's build, this was probably one of those computer stores that was either part of the group, or maybe they bought franchise or something like that of MicroAge Computer Center. These guys do call center tech support type stuff now. This computer store has changed its name a little bit, but they're still called Micro Computer Center, and they still are at the address and the phone number that I've blocked here, because again, I don't want them to get, you know, harassing phone calls. I'm going to show you the motherboard right now, and there is something rather interesting, and there is the serial number right there that they use at the computer store, which does match the paperwork, so I know this is the original motherboard to this computer. But I'm going to turn your attention to the processor. We'll just work our way over there. Do you see something wrong with that processor? If not, let me go ahead and rotate the camera. There you go. Do you got a better picture of that? Do you see what that processor says? P120. So, this is another interesting thing. If you didn't know, back in the day, a lot of people liked to remark processors. That's not all they did. They also liked to go ahead and overclock processors and sell a slower speed processor at a much higher price. And I believe that's unfortunately what was done to this customer's computer. As you can see, it was supposed to have a 166, and as a matter of fact, the jumper settings confirm that this processor is in fact running at 166 megahertz, or actually it's 133, because Cyrix processors, just like AMD's back in the day, did not run at full clock speed. Nonetheless, this processor does in fact run at 133 megahertz to give it a PR rating of 166, which the BIOS recognizes. So I'm going to leave it the way it is and still continue to run it at that speed, because obviously it's been running for this long at that speed for however many years this processor has been functioning in this computer. It's amazingly clean. I have to say, you know, I have a few Cyrix processors, and this is actually the most interesting one that I have, because let me just pop this baby out of here. So these are the processors that should have been installed in this computer. In fact, this one right here is probably the one that would have gone in this computer had they installed the correct processor and not overclocked it. But let me just show you the differences here. As you can see, these are actually squared off down here on both these corners, whereas this one's actually rounded off. Plus you have the gold plated indicator there, button, or whatever you want to call it, dot, I guess, to indicate pin 1. This one is obviously backwards. Look at that. I never even noticed that. That cap is on backwards on that processor. Huh. These two both have that little gold dot right there, but as you can see, this one has nothing but a black dot right there. If you flip it over the back side here, you can see some differences as well. And of course the L stands for a low power processor, so it's running at a 2.8 volt core as opposed to the 3.3, just to kind of reduce the heat a little bit. This might be a dual voltage processor, although I don't think so, because normally when the processors are dual voltage, they will actually list the I/O voltage as well on the cap there. Let's go ahead and flip these over and you can see some of the differences in the manufacturing process as well, which is just kind of a neat little thing to look at. You know, not really all that important for what we're doing here, but you know, just kind of neat to see the differences here. There you go. So the motherboard in this computer is running an Intel VX chipset, which is good to see. Could have been a sys chipset, could have been a VIA chipset, but they went with a good Intel chipset at least on this, so they didn't spare too much expense on the motherboard, although this is the VX chipset. I believe was the first socket 7 chipset, I think, that Intel had. I know this was I think this was the lowest end one. And you had the HX and you had the TX chipset, the HX actually being the high performance one, although it had problems with addressing caching memory above 64 megabytes. Unfortunately, that was one of its limitations. We've got the cache memory right here and the interface chips here for that cache memory, 7 nanosecond. It does have a coast module, which I do have some coast sticks. Cache on a stick is what those are. The coast term means, if you don't know that. But I would have to replace the tag module right here. And this is the original Cyrix 686 fan. So I'm guessing this probably came as a boxed processor, since it came with the original factory heatsink and fan. I did have to steal the screws out of this at some point, so I'm going to have to probably put those correct screws back into it at some point. The fan does work. It's a very high-speed fan, and it does make some noise. The bearings need to be oiled up a little. I've got my trusty box fan in the window there, blowing the air out of the room. So I'm going to go ahead and kick that baby up, plug this air hose in, and we'll give it a good old blow job here. What do you think about that? Now I got the air hose plugged in, so here we go. Alright, so we got everything cleaned up here, looking nice and shiny. Also want to give the front cover a good cleaning here. And one of the things I like about these old Enlight cases, a lot of them are like this, not just Enlight, but Enlight seemed to be the one that did it most often. They had this motherboard tray, which is actually removable from the case on the back side there. And under here you can see there's this nice little spring-loaded lock here that you pull down, and you just pop the motherboard out. You can see you've got your front panel plugs right here, and it makes it really nice to be able to just plug these in right now and then put the whole spiel, fold the whole spiel back up into the case there. We'll go ahead and fold this back in here. Lined up in the right place, which might be tricky. Yeah. There we go. Go ahead and plug in the PS2 header here, taking note of its direction. Okay. We'll do the COM1, COM2. So let's see here. This one is COM2. Are they labeled on the motherboard? I don't see where they're labeled on the board, so I'm just going to have to wing it here. Doesn't really matter. So this was the original card that was in the system, a Trite 9680, and as you can see the extra 1 megabyte of video memory that was installed on this. Well, I need to clean that. I'm going to clean that first before I put that in. I've also got, I'm going to put an Ethernet card in here, probably this 3Com. Clean it up a little bit, but I'm going to put this in here as well, since these are probably the most supported cards as far as a Windows 95 Ethernet card goes. I haven't decided yet, but I've got this Voodoo 2. I've actually got like 6 or 7 of these still. This is the STB branded, although it might be kind of a waste considering it's just the 166 Cyrix chip. This would probably not even be tested to that. I don't know. I might put that in actually. Why not, right? And this is another thing I never understood about IDE cables and the way they do this. I would prefer to route the cable like this in the case. Nice and clean, straight and to the point. Problem is that they had to frickin' mount the lock on the bottom of the cable. So essentially they assembled these cables backwards, and I've seen so many of these IDE cables like this that the notch here to get you into pin 1 correctly into the CD-ROM or the hard drive is actually on the bottom side of the cable instead of the top side where it should be. So then you end up doing this kind of a thing with the cable. I just never liked doing that. I just prefer doing a nice clean shot to the drive like that, but that's the way they did so many of them, and I don't. Well, the assembly of the computer is basically complete here. I've got the cards installed, and I was also able to find another blanks to put in here. Looks like I missed a screw. I'm going to have to put that in. I'm going to have to find another cable for the audio of the sound from the CD if I really care to use that, which I don't know that I will. Since it doesn't have an actual play button on the front of the CD-ROM, it's probably not really going to be a big deal. However, we got everything else back on this computer basically the way it was. I did find in my pile of stuff a 2.1 gigabyte quantum lightning drive. So I'm not sure if it's any good or not. We'll find out. There was something kind of funny on these old Ethernet cards. They actually have an icon right there that says this is not a modem port, and it's really funny because I can't tell you how many times I've had people actually plug their phone lines into that right there, because modern Ethernet cards and connectors on the motherboard do not have a symbol that says, hey, this is not for phones. Do not plug your phone into this port. So I find that stamping on that card kind of amusing. Well, as you can see, the machine is booted up here, and I'm just loaded into my microscope diagnostics floppy right now. And I'm just doing a low-level format of the hard drive. We're a little bit less than 50% here, but we're getting close. So far, so good. So if it passes that, and I'm pretty confident that it will, then we're going to go ahead and put Windows 95 back onto this system. That should be fun to find all the drivers for everything. Well, the low-level format of the hard drive was a complete success. So I'm going to go ahead and put the cover back on. Put the paper back in here. Actually, I'm going to put this down here in the bottom like so. With the wires from the fan cables there. Keep that in place. And of course, the covers on these things can be a bit tricky. but with a little bit of finesse, paying attention, and some swearing, we'll probably get this thing maybe put back on. Hopefully we won't have to dig out the hammer, but sometimes violence is necessary. Because apparently this might turn out to be in this case. Apparently one of the things I forgot about until I just started looking at this case and trying to senselessly beat the side or the top or whatever you want to call it back onto the case is that this case is one of those cases that actually got to take the front cover off and slide the shell, case shell, around first and then put the front cover back on. So that's what I'm gonna do. Tell you what, sometimes these old cases really suck. Don't ask me why they did it like this, but I do know that this is pretty typical of N-Light cases. You gotta take the front cover off. And what made me realize that was the fact that it's got these big holes right here. And if you notice, there's no screw holes. Well, I guess there's one couple right there. But this is where the little pins, or whatever you want to call them there, for the front cover go through. So, of course, this might just be a real bitch. Well, it came off. I didn't break it, so cool. Huh. Interestingly enough, that switch seems to work just fine there. So, I must have a problem with the button here or something. Oh well. Now it's time to put this on the right way. Sometimes you gotta do it 10 or 15 times and cuss yourself silly to the point where even the sailor's gonna blush before you finally realize the error of your ways. And I hope that I haven't tweaked this outer casing shell so much in the fact that it won't go back on the right way anymore. Okay, with a little bit less swearing and beating on this case this time, I think I got it pretty much all the way on there now. So I'll go ahead and throw a few screws in here to sink it back all the way, get the cover back on, and then we're going to proceed with the installation of Windows 95. I did a little bit of research on the motherboard, and it turned out that this was a Soyo motherboard. I believe the model is 5V. I'm not entirely certain about that because there was A0, A1, A2 right behind it on the website that I looked it up on. Apparently I only installed 40 meg of memory on the system instead of 64, but that's okay. I thought those were 8 meg sticks that I put in there, but apparently they were only 4 meg sticks, so instead of 64 I've got 40, but that's still plenty enough for what I would probably do with this system anyway. It's funny because 95, you know, it scans for your hardware on the system during installation. Well, it actually found this card, but it was yellowed out. It didn't install the drivers for it, so I just went in and reinstalled the drivers and asked for the disk, and I put it in, and voila, it's there and working. So I don't know what the deal is with that. One of the things I'll show you real quick, I did install MechWarrior 2 on this, and the demo anyway. And I might show it in a later video. It's kind of interesting. I haven't really installed too many games on it yet, but I'm going to go ahead and load this boot CD, show you guys that real quick, just to kind of demo this a little bit. I'm not going to run benchmarks or anything like that on this system, so I know that it's it does the job plenty good. So I think I've still got the CD in there. Yep. So what these discs are, and see, okay, we got volume. And I believe this is playing off of the CD-ROM itself. So what these discs are is back in the day, back in the golden age of magazines, you could buy a magazine. In this case, this was Boot magazine, and you'd get a disc with it. And some of them were customized discs, some of them were just generic, some of them were really sucky and they only included AOL version whatever on them, so that kind of sucked. But the good ones, like this one for example, actually has game demos on it. And some of these also have drivers and stuff like that on them, although this particular one does not. But you can get these discs off of eBay for, you know, a couple bucks a piece, or sometimes even less than that. And this is a great way to get old games, even though they're demo. A lot of these games you can't find anymore as it is. And the ones you do find on the internet, say, there's one, and I can't remember the website now, but there's one that's got all kinds of old vintage games on there. The problem is it comes with an emulator. And separating the game from the emulator, you can do that. I've done it. The problem is that it wants a product key, and it wants to have the original CD once you do that on those games that started requiring the CD to be placed in there. So you end up having to go back and do some old school pirating techniques, I guess you'd call, and kind of crack the games to work. So that is one way to get these old games. But if you don't know what games that were available to play on these older systems, this is a good way to get them. Just like it was back then, you can get these demo discs for next to nothing on eBay and put these in the system and just play these demos. One of my favorite ones from back in the day, which I actually did buy a lot of, was PC Gamer. And this is when PC Gamer was really cool. You buy the magazine and you get the CD with it for about $7.99, I think it was. And every month there were different demo games on these discs, as well as some of them have drivers. This is also another good way to get older stuff like DirectX, for example. A lot of these games have DirectX included, and a lot of the DirectX versions actually have drivers included with them. Later versions of DirectX, I think starting with version 3, especially version 6 and 7, there's a lot of drivers for video cards and sound cards as well, bundled with those DirectX. So that's a way to get drivers if you're having trouble finding them on a Google search, for example. But anyway, you know, you used to get these discs, and there's also on these discs, and I've got a few of them here now. A few of these had little, this is PC Gamers anyway, had little missions that you can do. And so every month there'd be like a storyline, and you'd have to go through, and if you wanted to do that anyway, you could go through and play the story out to find a clue or something like that, and then the next month would be another continuation of that story. And they stopped doing that at some point during these discs. The software for the game, or whatever you want to call it there, that you go find clues for, worked, but it didn't have anything, and there wasn't any new clues, there wasn't anything going on, so it kind of sucked. And eventually, towards 99 or 2000, something like that, they just stopped making these discs, and eventually you just got nothing but an AOL disc, and then they didn't ship discs at all with their magazines. So unfortunately, the golden age of magazines didn't last very long, at least gaming magazines. But from about 1995 to about 98, 99, these were definitely pretty cool. So I'll probably do a video on these PC Gamer discs, actually, because I'd like to show you guys that stuff. But I'll just give you a taste of what these things were like. So this one's a little bit different than the PC Gamer one, but it's kind of similar in some ways, because you've got the same kind of thing that you'd have to click on. So like, let's go down to the demos here, and then actually respond to my click. And of course this can give me an error about the browser, which I don't have and I don't care about. So let's let this thing load up a little bit here. And of course they're advertising America Online, because that was one of the supporters for all these magazines. AOL bundled themselves with everything and anything. Not to mention sending you discs in the mail back in the day once a month, to whether you wanted them or not. But you got all these demos right here, and you can load them from the disc right here. And in this case of this one, go back. In the case of this one actually has a demo video. Last time I tried to play this from this button, it wouldn't work, but let's see if it works this time. And it doesn't. I'm actually going to install this demo because this video looked pretty cool. I'll load this video up in the media player in just a second, but you've got Mech Warriors 2, Mercenaries, and a lot of these games too, like the PC Gamer discs, they'd have new levels for Warcraft and Warcraft 2 and Descent 2. It was really pretty cool. And you've got Quake. Latest shareware version, that's pretty cool. This is old enough to actually have the demo shareware version of Quake. Wow. And of course we got Warcraft 2. And I actually like the demo version of Warcraft 2. I always thought that was kind of neat. It's a little bit different thing than what the retail version was. But you get kind of the idea what these discs are. I'm not going to go through these discs too crazy here, but just get out of that. And let's just go ahead and quit. And like with everything else back in the day, it was made with Macromedia. So let's go in here and explore the discs. Now, a lot of these had media and stuff like that on them that sometimes wasn't really on the menu there, but you could go and find it. So I'm going to go ahead and load up this one right here. This is numbered Cobb. Circle of Blood.
Something has gone desperately wrong. You are George Stobart, an average American in Paris on vacation. When suddenly, you become caught in a labyrinth of intrigue. Answer the call to action. You must accept your fate. Only you are capable. You must embark on a vanguard exploration of Europe and the Middle East. A world where what you say could mean destruction. Gather crucial information. Uncover a fiendish plot. Realize bitter rivalries. Test your resolve. Deep in the heart of this mystery, you discover artifacts that contain the means to plummet mankind into a new dark age. Ruins, catacombs, excavations, all may hold the secret. This layer upon layer of intrigue, seething nests of death, and a tangled web of characters will force you to seek the answer. Who are the Templars? Can you succeed, or will they find you first? In a world so rich, dark, and secret that you must not stop, you must discover the plot, accept your fate, embrace your destiny. A myriad of questions. Relentlessly pursue, but don't get caught in the circle of blood.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Now, if you look at the characters on that, the guy and especially the girl at the end, don't they look a little bit like the same characters that were in Titan AE? Just saying. If you don't know what Titan AE is, go and look that up on YouTube. Okay, let's look at one more here. What's this one? Okay, that's the boot CD, and okay. Let's look at Assassin here. Let's turn up the volume a little bit here. Let's look at Assassin here.
We've uncovered some evidence that Jacques Arnaud, the head of Microcom, has connections to an American offshoot of the Red Storm. We believe he's sympathizing with them and is planning to use the new government contract to fuel a hostile stateside rebellion. Some important people in the government are very nervous about this situation gathering any steam. They want Arnaud out and a friend of the government in. They want this situation taken care of publicly to discourage any other fringe groups who might be getting bold. Arnaud is having a press conference tomorrow at 1700 hours at Microcom to officially announce the contract. We want you to take him out at the podium. An M-Tech rifle will be waiting for you. Jet Jones is going to be your support in the evac. She's got your escape route mapped out as per my instructions. Hit and run. We'll take care of the press conference after you're out. blame it on the Redstone rebels. It'll throw the whole rebel effort into chaos and swing public opinion back in favor of the government. Quick and clean, Jack. No screw-up.
Jack. Isn't that the guy's name in 24? I don't watch that show, but... I wouldn't mind flying that. Assassin 2015. Hey, look at that. That's just 1 year away. Well, looks like my memory card's about gone here, so I'm gonna go ahead and end this video right now. I'm gonna do some more retro videos here. I've got a few more things to show you here. Some games and some computers and things like that. So, until then, everybody, take care.